sure I see the future in my head, in my head. Blaming myself for all I need help for. In my head, in my head. I cannot be sure I see the future in my head, in my head.
How's it going? My name's Dan, or DJ name D Squared. I'm here to talk to you about something today that I've noticed throughout the last 2 years of being in the club scene and DJing that just bothers me. A lack of DJs caring about the product that they're delivering to the customers, which would be, your club attendees. And I just would like to address it and educate. Maybe you know what it is already, maybe you don't, and not to say that I know more than you, but we'll dive in here and take a look. So what I'm going to talk about is signal flow, from how your digital song gets out of your CDJ or controller into the mixer, what happens when it enters the mixer, and then what happens when it leaves the mixer and then hits the sound system. A lot of people just, they know that you press play and music comes out and you do your DJing and that's it. They don't really know what's going on inside of it. It's not a simple signal comes in and goes out. A lot happens inside that you don't know of. So right off the bat here, if you're one of these DJs that you're lighting up all your freaking lights on the master and the channel, they didn't put red lights on there just so because they ran out of green lights. Famous quote by Calvin Harris. So what happens with sound is when you press play on your mixer, it sends a digital file, converts it into an analog signal. Let's go into an analog signal, electrical signal through your RCA wires, which are the red and white connector that you usually will see, and that carries an electrical signal that then is turned into the channel on the mixer here, and you adjust how much of the volume on coming in from the CJ into the mixer with the gain knob, the trim knob. Now they have it going from minus 24 decibel from the original signal to 0 and all the way up to 10, and then there's a little over letting you know you've gone over the capacity that this mixer is able to output at a clean signal. So if I bring it down to 0, that's basically the signal coming out of the mixer, out of the CDJ into the mixer is the exact same, and it carries through. So we'll turn up the channel here. It's speaker volume. And then, so what happens is you have your fader here, you turn up your fader, that's actually sending, that means it's coming out of your channel into your master channel. And your master channel is what sends it out into the sound system of the club or your house, whatever, right? So if we turn that up to 0, right now I'm having it about 0 here and 0 here. So the signal that's leaving the CDJ is entering the mixer and then leaving the mixer at the same volume. Most people and most clubs will boost it, just because you get a boosted sound. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's any different. It doesn't. The 0 and full boosted sound is no different at all. It's just louder. So what ends up happening is, as you notice, I had to turn down this, and that's what most in-house sound techs do. Is if you're boosting your signal on the output, they're going to end up just turning down the in-house sound system to protect their speakers. Because most club sound systems, like you're looking at anywhere from $20,000 up to $150,000 of stereo equipment. It's not just this. Like this is maybe $5,000 that you could wreck from, overloading it or whatever, right? But you're looking at your insurance of $100,000 of stereo equipment that you could just be blowing, and not to mention all the listeners in the club whose ears you're potentially permanently damaging. So what happens when you boost it too much? Let's see if you can hear it. Sounds a little distorted. Doesn't sound too nice, does it? It's loud, but you can still make out what the song is, right? We turn this back enough so it's not in the red, in the yellows, let's say. It's still acceptable. I usually, what I would do is I keep my actual channel gain turned down just a bit, not to be all the way up there, and then I'll turn my master up to just before 10 on the DJ M800. Other mixers are the same. Just because most club sound systems, they're automatically set to allow a maximum volume of that, and then anything over that, they'll stop. So, what do I do? And near the end of the song here. Actually, here's a good point. Actually, when we're mixing in another song together, the master channel, it's actually a summing box. What it does is it sums all the channels that are playing with the faders turned up into one channel. And sum obviously means add. So they add. Let's find another song here. It actually adds the signals together. I'm not going to even beat match this just to show you, but if you look at the lights here, if we have this turned up, they're both playing, they're not turned up on the fader. If I turn them up at the same time, they actually add up more than it would with just one. With just one song going, let's say it's going to about, or we'll put it to 0, just so we can tell. We add in our second channel, it's actually boosted the signal up extra 4 decibels. So you need to be aware of that when you're mixing, is that you're adding 2 songs together into the output, and it can, it boosts the output volume. So always keep it, your master volume. You should technically always keep your master volume. Just turn back just a bit. The in-house sound guy is going to be the one who's going to be judging the right volume for the venue. You don't have to always just go maximum that it'll go. That's not the best volume always. If it's too quiet, either gain what you can reasonably without distorting it, and ask the sound guy maybe to boost it. So, just to recap, leaves the CDJ, goes into a channel with your trim. You turn up your fader, this one here. Turn up your fader, it goes into your master channel. So then, that's not all that happens though. It leaves the master channel, and I got Ableton here simulating what a club sound system would be, because it leaves your mixer and it goes to the club sound system stereo equipment, which further processes the signal. It adds a little bit of EQ and compression to get that nice room sound, because you just go straight into speakers. In my apartment here it sounds fine, but in a club you have to kind of tweak it and tune it to get sounding good further. So I don't know if you can see here, John, but zoom in here, we got our incoming signal here, and right now it's good. If I boost this though, it's all of a sudden going red. So that means the signal leaving the mixer before it even hits the sound system is already too loud. And what a club sound system will do is they'll throw a limiter on there, and that's to protect their sound system, and as well as to it boosts lower volume, so it makes it sound a little louder and punchier. but it's mainly there as a safety from DJs who do this too often and boost everything that they can. And as you'll see on my master output, this would be what leaves the club sound system and then finally goes into the speakers that you hear. It's turned down. It's quieter, but it sounds super distorted. Turn it up. It sounds like shit. So, turn back our gain a bit. Back our master a bit. And then all of a sudden we're not in red volumes here. And our master channel is good. But what will end up happen usually is, if you keep boosting the channel, what's going to end up happening is the sound guy is going to go to his limiter. You keep boosting it into the red, he's going to just go in and turn down his gain until it's at a good volume again. But it still is super distorted coming out of the mixer. So, boosting your volume is not necessarily going to get it louder, because the guy that has to look after that, $50,000 sound system, it's his job to make sure that DJs aren't blowing it and overloading it. So he's just going to go in and turn it down. Even if you keep turning it up, he can turn it down. And all you're doing is when you turn it up is just adding distortion. You're not making the signal any better. And you want to have the cleanest sound that you can coming from your digital file out into your speakers. One issue I'd also like to address is EQing. I see a lot of DJs. Here, I have the same channel going into two channels, the same song. It's the same thing, right? I see a lot of DJs that do this. So what I did is I boosted all my EQs, my low, my mids, and my highs past the 12 o'clock point. In some circumstances, totally acceptable, but for the most part, 12 o'clock is all you should ever need for when you're playing a song. Because if you listen, all I had to do was just turn down my gain. Boosting all this, it just makes the signal louder. It doesn't actually change it. There's no difference. It's just one's a louder signal, and then you just have to end up turning it down in the end. So, just for some of you that may not know, 12 o'clock is pretty good. The exception, I would say, if you're in a club and the sound system is lacking a little bit of punch, maybe give it a bit of a boost to the low. Make sure you don't go over into your reds. Just a bit of a boost. You don't need to go overboard, especially with the bass. Like, you're going to blow subwoofers that way. And you don't want to have a promoter or a club owner come to you at the end of the night and yell in your face about why you blew his $1,000 speakers. And just show some responsibility for the equipment that's not yours. You didn't pay for any of that in the club. You may be the star of the night, but you wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the people providing, the mixers, the CDJs, and the speakers. And that's another thing. Boosting all these into the red puts a huge strain on the mixer as well, because it's an electrical signal going through, and electricity produces heat. And if you overload it constantly, you're driving that electrical signal more than the current can handle. And you can actually end up blowing circuits inside the mixer by doing this, It's made to handle itself at a good, acceptable volume going out the mixer. If it's, like I said, if it's not loud enough, if you feel it's not loud enough, call the sound guy over. He'll sometimes, be able to turn it up on the in-house speakers as long as it's not peaking.